So, I guess I've wanted to make this video for a while. And that is just because a few years ago, I decided to take this art thing a lot more seriously and more than a hobby. And that included taking some risks. And that got me to a position that I think I want to talk about. Now, not that it matters, but I started drawing and making whatever you want to say art when I was a kid. And that meant that I used to basically just draw all over my sketchbooks and, the kind of typical process that most people follow to become an artist. And that's fine. I don't think that's bad. I think if you have a desire, not even the talent, if you just have a desire to make art, you should probably consider doing it. And whether or not that stays with you forever, or whether or not that's something that goes anywhere, is something we'll get into in a minute. But I ended up going to art school, of course, to my parents' not so super excitedness. And I realized in art school that, because I was paying for it myself, that maybe I should reconsider. So anyways, I ended up getting a job in sales. And I did that because sales is sort of this it felt like the right move. I don't know. My dad was in sales. I read a bunch of sales books because he had them, and I'm like, sales seems like a decent career. And when I say that, I mean it both pays the bills and seems to have some level of autonomy, which most jobs don't have. So, anyways, that part is so irrelevant to the story. Eventually, down the career path, down sales, I got into tech, got a good job, whatever you want to say. It wasn't even a sales job I had like a regular, cool tech job. And I decided at that point, because I was getting a little older, that I was going to see if I can make this art thing work. And this art thing working meant quitting my cushy job to go and pursue art full time. And at that point, I wasn't drawing. I was just painting. And you can maybe see a painting back here in the background. Let's see if I can move it. Right, that's something that I'm working on. It's only in here for this video. And okay, let's try this like this. Maybe I shouldn't have lifted this thing up. It's okay, just keep going. Nope. So there was just a day where I decided that I was finally going to go, and I was going to try the art thing. And that was a scary decision. But at the end of the day, I needed to see what would happen, because I knew for sure that if I didn't try the art thing, then I would be very sad. And I don't mean like sad, depressed, but that feeling when you think you could do something and the only reason you haven't done it is just because you haven't done it. Like you just know. And it was really starting to bother me because I was seemed to be moving along in my career, putting in the same amount of effort, that I thought, I'll see what happens if I quit my job and try to do art for a living. That was a few years ago. And what actually happened was pretty staggering, because I think anyone that considers something along the lines of doing art for a living eventually talks themselves out of it, because they believe one of two things. They believe that the world will completely explode and they will be on the street in no time, or they will become a rich and famous artist immediately. And, you know, in retrospect, it's pretty ridiculous that anyone would think like this, because just like with the rest of life, everything kind of happens in the middle. So I quit, and within a few months, I had sold some more paintings. Not a lot of paintings. It was just like a little bit here, a little bit there. It was enough to keep me motivated. And actually, I should probably add that I sold my car, and I had a decent car, and that kind of gave me the runway to pursue this. And, you know, if you stick around for the rest of this video, I'll tell you where I'm at now and how everything went down. But I ended up I ended up selling some paintings, and then, you know, really having time to focus on social media. And that got me to a place where I started learning, you know, how to grow an account or how to do this. And that got me to create this account here, but also another account on Twitter. And, you know, this next part, take it or leave it, you know, some of you might be offended by this, but I ended up, based on the time that I decided to be an artist, the kind of thing leading the culture was crypto. And this is not going to go where you think it's going to go, so I just want to put that out there. But I started building an audience on Twitter, of all places, because I got some advice from someone that I thought was reputable. And that led me down the path of just like following what's happening in crypto. And, you know, I was just trying to make content, trying to build a following. And one day, I drew something. And up until that point, I had a really hard time figuring out what it is that I am, or just had a hard time really building an audience that was really super interested in what I was doing. And then one day, I posted a drawing. And the drawing, if we want to talk about like social media engagement or performance, the drawing did really well. Comparative to just about everything else that I have been doing on social media my whole life. And the thing that was funny about that was that I actually have been drawing more than painting my whole life. And I chose to paint because it felt like it was the quintessential thing for an artist to do. You know, if you're not a painter, you're not an artist. I don't know where I got the idea, but, you know, I don't think it's also a rare idea. And when this drawing performed really well on social media, which I know is arbitrary, it got me thinking. I have dozens of sketchbooks that I've never shown anyone. They're all hiding behind me here. And I draw all the time, but I always thought the drawings were like a secret, that only I should ever see them because they must be terrible and whatever. So since that day, that was 2022, that was a couple years ago. But since that day, I have decided that maybe drawing is something that I'm going to continue doing. And that led me to creating this propaganda thing that you are currently watching and seeing. And what propaganda is just drawings. I've done maybe 400 drawings in the last couple of years. And this last year has been really hectic because I decided that I wanted to draw a poster for every F1 race this year. And I'm choosing to do these random drawings because I really want to get the practice in, because I think at the end of the day, practice is kind of the most important part of upskilling as an artist. So, you're probably wondering, where's this going? And I'm going to tell you. When I started drawing is when I started making money. It was almost close to immediate that as soon as I started drawing, I had people that wanted to buy art from me. Like, not that I wasn't selling paintings up until that point, like that was going fine, but it was really the drawings that kicked off a new kind of rhythm of me selling art and also growing. You know, I don't have a ton of followers, but I grew such a significant amount of followers right after I started doing these drawings. And it taught me something that I think is a valuable lesson. And that is simply that you shouldn't try to hide who you are. And you shouldn't try to be someone you're not. And in my particular case, I was hiding. I was trying to make art that I thought people wanted, and not the art that I personally wanted to make. And so that started an entire career of me selling drawings. And that lasted about 2 years. And when I say selling drawings, I mean, I live in an expensive city. And I had a girlfriend and all this good stuff. And I was able to at least pay my bills every month, which does not sound like a lot to many people, especially in this city. But when you consider that I think most artists don't ever make any money and have a hard time with it, it felt like a fortune. It really did. It felt like I had struck gold. And I knew that more or less every month I would be able to pay my bills. Now, obviously, and I hope if you've been listening to this for a few minutes, you'll remember that I did start my career in sales. Now, I did very little talking when people came to me. It wasn't like a hard close. People came to me and they either bought the art I made or asked me to do something for them. So, you know, maybe once in a while I would just, you know, if I was going to give one sales tip, actually, to artists, is there's an awkward point where someone comes to you and they're like, hey, I'd like to buy this from you. And I think a lot of people will be like, oh, that's great, thank you. This is how much it costs. And then they stop talking. And I think that's actually the biggest mistake you make, because people like to buy stuff. And if people are asking about something, they're usually pretty serious about buying it, but sometimes, like, everyone's like this. You kind of need a push. So I would just, if someone asked if they're to buy something from me or for me to create it, I would just assume that we had a deal, which meant that I would just be like, hey, no problem. These are the timelines. This is how I'm going to get it to you. This is how you pay me, whatever. And I do something that I don't recommend to anyone, so please don't take this next piece of advice, is I actually would, if I was going to do a commission, I wouldn't take any money until I was finished. And that takes some confidence in yourself, but also some stupid risks that I don't recommend to anyone. It did not backfire on me, but it should have. So for about 2 years, I did that. And that included some graphic design, because obviously I think, you know, I'm mostly selling ink drawings here, but I think there's a balance of where you might actually sell some graphic design. It kind of works the same way, same principle, same ideas. and people like your style, so they want to see what you can make. And this is where it gets kind of funny. And this is actually a part that I would recommend many people to listen to if you ever want to consider being an artist full time. Is because things were going well, I started being more picky about the kind of stuff that I was going to work on. And what that looked like is I would start doing more and more graphic design work. Now, I have a lot of respect for graphic designers, by the way. This is not a knock against them. But I have no interest in being a graphic designer. And that is simply because I think graphic design and selling drawings like this are not even remotely similar. You know, there's an end goal, it's for a business. The pricing is different, the time it takes is different, the goal is different, the measurements are different, whatever. But I was taking on more and more design work because I was just kind of enjoying feeling like I had made it. And it got me to a point where I was getting really frustrated because a lot of people would hire me, and I don't blame them for this, but they had a lot of opinions about the work I was producing because they were paying for a service. That's the difference. Is when you buy art from me, you're buying a product that's finished. And if you ask me for a commission, you're also buying a product. You're not really coming into me to be like, hey, you know, let's work on this together. You're hiring me to make a piece of art for you. But with graphic design, it was a lot of people being like, hey, okay, thanks, that design's great, let's change it. And I was like, what? Like, I couldn't imagine these people that were hiring me, they didn't really these people hiring me didn't know what they were talking about. And I think that's a dangerous direction you go down when you're doing design work, is that there's a lot of people with a lot of opinions that don't know anything about design. I'm probably one of them. And so here's the sad part. I decided that the way things were going was probably not going to work out. And that is because of a number of additional factors. And, you know, being in this city is probably one of the biggest factors. I'm in Vancouver, by the way, if you're wondering. And having a partner and life progressing, I just kind of realized that the business that I was creating was so not going to work. You know, it was, when things were good, I would sell some, but like, you know, even if you do the math, you know, like, you can always raise your prices, but you don't want to do like a jump scare of raise your prices. And even though I was selling a drawing for something like $500, it would still take me so long to create a piece that I could only either raise my prices significantly or work much faster, both of which were kind of not good solutions. And so I ended up getting a job. Now, I didn't rush to get a job, but I did decide that I should get a job again. And it's been about a little over a year since I got this job. And it's a fine job, by the way. It's a great job. I am very happy to have it. I'm very fortunate to have it. I still make art every single day. I still, when I come off work, I draw. Maybe a little bit less than I used to, but it's very consistent. But the thing is that now I can actually make art that I like. And I'm not dealing with someone who has an opinion about the kind of art that they want. And I'm not super tied to someone else and their day-to-day views on what you're making. And some people might say that I quit and I'm a failure. And probably there's very few people that would say it to my face, because everyone knows how hard it is to make it as an artist in the first place. But I think my lesson here is, like, let's say I did this for almost 3 years full time, and it was in no way was it a failure of a project. I definitely wasn't going to get rich doing it, but it was definitely a fascinating experience in what it looks like to do art full time. And I guess the only question that I think about, and that maybe you're thinking about, is, was it worth it? Which, absolutely yes. And would I do it again? That is the question I think most people are curious about, especially the people that are close to me in my life. Well, let's take a look at it. I am going to keep making art. Okay, I have this series that I'm doing, again, just for me, for once, which has been so liberating, by the way. Making art that you're willing to spend a lot of time on, and you have absolutely no attachment to selling it. Like, you'd actually rather not sell any of it because you want to keep all of it. That's like a special feeling. And I'll tell you this. If you're an artist and you've only ever done it as a hobby, and you make art and you wish you could sell all your art, there is going to become a time where selling your art's sad, because there's pieces that you want to keep, but someone paid you for them. And then there's the flip side of sadness, where you just want people to buy stuff because you got to pay the bills. But when you get to a point like this, where you would rather not have anyone buy this stuff so you can keep it, I think that's a happy place. And it helps you, I think, fall in love with art all over again. But would I do it again? Yeah, I would. But under very different circumstances, and absolutely would require me to follow a different process and a different business model, I guess. And what that means is that the model of, I have to, where are these pens? The model of, I'm going to create something, post it on social media, and see if someone buys it, I don't think that's a good model. The model of, I'm going to post some art and get some commissions, and because I get these commissions, I'm winning. I don't know if that's worth it either, because I don't think people really consider, if you're spending all this time making art for other people and you're doing it because you think that's how you progress as an artist, you're really excluding something along the lines of, what happens, like what happens if you just get a job where you make decent money and you spend all of your time advancing as an artist? Because right now, I can put in my 5-6 hours a day plus weekends, and I can get better than the days where I was doing 8 hours a day, but almost exclusively for clients, or exclusively for a piece I have to sell. And it became a rush. Everything was a rush. You got to pay your bills, you got to make this piece as fast as you can, and you're not really spending time to develop your craft, because at the end of the day, you're tired. So, what's my lesson to other artists? Well, I'm going to go with, if you really want to pursue art full time, and you have thought it through, and you're not overly confident, and like the year that I quit to sell art full time, or make art full time, important that you understand both of those are important, I sold a number of artworks for a decent amount of money, like paintings for a few thousand here, commissions for a few thousand. Like I had the evidence to prove that there was people that wanted to buy my art, and I had a skill set that was in demand enough that time could be the missing factor. So if you were gonna quit your job or quit your life and focus on art, there is some of that which you should consider. I am fully supportive of the people that say, I don't care, I'm going to try it anyways, and I'm going to find out. Because I think, I saw Tom Hanks say something about this recently, where he basically says, go for the Hail Mary. Like, let's see what happens. Because you know what? You do only live once. And, the best case and the worst case are both pretty unlikely to happen. And the medium case is actually pretty good also. So that's lesson number one. Lesson number two is like, don't rush into this, because if you're young, and you're gonna give up a lot of opportunity to do this full time, make sure it's the right choice. Because I think at the end of the day, I think you can be a significant contributor to the art world and the conversation and still have a job. I don't think having a job, and by the way, so many famous artists have had jobs. And, things that they did to pay the bills, that I don't think you should be ashamed of doing it. I think it gives you liberty to do things that are more interesting and spend an entire year drawing Formula One posters because you think it's cool. Like, that's something that is really, that's liberty. Now, for those of you that are going to disregard my advice because you think I'm stupid or I gave up too soon or whatever, first and foremost, I love you guys the most. Guys, gals, they, thems, whatever. I think if that's your first answer, that's the right answer. Not to say that that both directions aren't right, but I think sometimes you just gotta see what happens. Here I'm sitting after 3 years of making art full time in the most expensive city in the world, and here I am. I'm fine. Like, am I unscathed? I am virtually unscathed. Like, maybe things got a little bit rocky for a little bit there, and my personal relationships took a toll on that. But who's to say that wouldn't have happened if I just stayed at my job and I got laid off because I was in tech, or I took a bad job that stressed me out and I shut down. Like, I think those things are likely to happen as well. So that's another thing. I think also it's important to really think about what you want from doing this. Like, are you trying to sell art? AKA, are you trying to start a business where the product that you sell is your art? Or are you trying to contribute heavily to the art conversation globally? Or are you trying to become a famous artist that everyone knows about because you think that's the most important part of being an artist? There's no right answer here. But knowing which of those is you is important because they're very different. Some of them require you to quit your job, maybe. Some of them don't. Gary Vee, whether you like him or not, it's something really good that if you're 21 years old, you're living at home, and you can make $1,000 a month selling art, like, maybe you try that for a little bit. If you're 40 years old, you have a mortgage and kids, maybe you want to consider how you attack this. And not to say you shouldn't, but maybe your primary objective should be, what can I contribute to the art world globally? What movement am I a part of? And maybe that gets you to create 1 or 2 pieces a year that are really meaningful to you and an audience, and you get an opportunity to share it with people, and you still have a job. There's nothing wrong with that, and I think that's a great solution for a lot of people. As for me, what am I going to do? Well, let's see. I'm going to finish this project here. And once I finish this project, I'm probably going to... then I've got an art show I have to finish. So this piece over here is part of the next art show. So that's going to happen next. That'll take me probably to the spring. And then after the spring, I'll see. You know, for me, making art is it's so ingrained in me. And I think once in a while someone will ask me, like, when are you going to stop doing this? But I don't know how that works, because I genuinely am unaware of a world where you can just shut something off like this. Right? Like, it's Wednesday, it's 6 o'clock. I just worked all day, I ate dinner, and I sat down. And I'm going to be here for a few hours. And then I'm going to go watch TV for half an hour and go to bed. And that to me seems like the right decision. And so I don't know how this ends. And I don't know if I need to figure that out either. Because at some point, and I think, you know, we're cursed right now because we're so obsessed with what's happening and knowing what's happening and dopamine hits and quick returns and going viral, that I think we just get obsessed with having to know what happens tomorrow. So for me, all I'm going to do is keep making art. And then I'll cross whatever bridge I need to cross if it ever comes. And I recommend that as a great solution, especially when you consider it as a craft. You know, just draw for the rest of your life. Yeah. Well, thank you if you happen to watch this video, which I am very grateful if you have. I'm an artist. I'm not a content creator. I'm not trying to be. I feel like this is something I should be doing, so I'm doing it. So follow, subscribe, like, tag your friends. I'll probably keep making videos like this. Maybe I won't, because it doesn't really matter. Peace.